Bitcoin just made a huge move, and it may have just saved alt season. It's really important to kind of understand what just happened and what we could be seeing going forward. But we have seen Bitcoin hold up really quite well at some of these previous levels, with a lot of the fundamental data that we're looking for staying in a relatively good situation. So I want to talk a little bit about that today. This video is going to be focused more on Bitcoin specifically and why it impacts all of the coins that we like to talk about on the channel so much: ICP, KAS, ZBCN, Onyx coin, all of these. Because essentially where we're at right now is, it's my opinion, we are back in the season where really only Bitcoin matters again. I know this is how it is most of the time, and that's really how it kind of should be most of the time. Altcoins generally kind of play off of what Bitcoin does, and so we need to watch really closely to see what Bitcoin is in fact doing. Now, however, before we go and look specifically into Bitcoin, I did want to show you just a couple of things that are happening within the alts, within the alt market, within some of the alt data, so you can see why I think that it is so important to kind of be watching Bitcoin closely to see what it does. So let's not waste any more time. We'll go on ahead and we'll dive right in, taking a look at the total to market cap. What we can see here with the total to market cap is, of course, we did see that really strong move up. We kind of peaked in kind of between these two levels, again, getting close to all-time highs, but still not breaking them, and also not making a higher high either. This is a lower high, which potentially could be a bad thing depending on where this goes next. But if we look here, we can see we did kind of, we've peaked off here, did a little bit of a double top, and now we are starting to move down. The key level here is going to be kind of this like 127 or like 1.27 trillion to about like 1.34 trillion. I would imagine that we see alts bleed kind of down into this area here. It's going to be crucial that we see alts hold this area up. If we don't see them hold this area up, then we're going to be kind of back in this worst section where we could even look to see lows down into like the 1.04 trillion range, which again, not necessarily the best thing. And that would mean about a 40% drawdown within the alt market, which of course, not really the best news there. So we do need to watch this piece really closely. And I think whether alts can hold this, again, is largely dependent on Bitcoin. So we will go ahead and check Bitcoin out here in just one second. I also want to give a look at the altcoin market. Now, this is kind of a mix of both. You can see here tons of RSIs coming down all across the market. We're at an average about 43.41. So we are still in neutral, but you can see we're definitely getting towards weak. And we also can see, oops, let me readjust this. I'll leave it. But we also can see here on the fear and greed index, we are coming down to 66. Still in greed, but we are getting closer to this neutral point. And I think a lot of this is due to the fact that the Bitcoin is kind of started to sell off a little bit and show some weakness. And that's impacting the market more than anything, because of course alts have been kind of getting drawn down over the past probably week or so. If we look at the Bitcoin exchange liquidation maps, we can see a pretty dramatic change here. We have seen a flip where it does actually make sense for the price to move up, because we're seeing a lot of shorts piling in here. Now, this is probably going to be one of those areas where we see things just kind of chop around generally, and we'll have to see, I'm sure we'll see a move up, we'll liquidate all the shorts, longs will get bullish, we'll come back down, liquidate all the longs, as normally what happens in these periods of time. So what we can see here, though, is definitely a lot of the longs being cleared out over the past couple of days because so many people were liquidated. And we can actually see this on the 24-hour liquidations, with $800 million being liquidated. Again, primarily longs here. Not that should be too much of a surprise to anybody. Over the past 24 hours, again, ETH and Bitcoin kind of leading the way here. Kind of interesting to see here that ETH is actually larger than Bitcoin, which means there was kind of more leverage sitting on Ethereum that has been liquidated than what we saw on Bitcoin. So pretty interesting there. If we go ahead and we actually kind of start moving into Bitcoin, we can see we're kind of moving back into this Bitcoin type of season. So initially we were seeing a wedge happening. Bollinger Bands were squeezing, as we talk about. Whenever they squeeze, we know volatility is coming. Definitely broke out of the bottom side of the wedge, so we'll get rid of this for right now. And you can see that we're starting to see a little bit of that move to the downside. What does this potentially look like? It potentially looks like we might be in yet another descending channel. Bitcoin loves to get into these, and so far it does look like this is a possibility. And depending on how long it goes, kind of depends on how far, we potentially see it go down to the downside. So again, we'll have to see. There is always the possibility it even breaks out of this, and maybe this whole this whole descending channel is broken, and maybe we come back down and find some support down at these lower levels. Anything can happen. It is crypto, but so far, at least what we're seeing here is appearing like we might be getting back into a little bit of a descending channel. Obviously, macro news still looking good, but there has been a little bit of fear and a little bit of uncertainty going on between the recent tariff announcements as well as kind of I think the market's coming to the realization and the acceptance of the fact that we are very, very likely not going to be getting any rate cuts, at least probably until March 2026, barring some unforeseen consequences. Now, the reason why I say this is because we've seen essentially at the FOMC meeting a couple days ago, Chairman Powell basically said, I'm not going to be cutting rates unless there's a reason to cut rates. And currently there's no reason to cut rates. The economy's doing well, employment's high, inflation's low. What do I need? Like, what do we need to cut rates for? Which is a fair point to make, right? And so because of that, I think the market is kind of generally coming to the realization that we're probably not going to be seeing rates getting cut. And so this is why we are seeing some of this kind of slumping happening on Bitcoin, as well as the slumping happening within the alt market as well. So overall, we'll have to see, how this kind of unfolds over time. But in my opinion, this is not something to be too concerned about. A lot of people, I think, are getting overly bearish, talking about, oh, well, this is now the end of, alt season. That was the top, whatever. I don't think any of that is correct. I mean, we still have not seen in this like recent pump, I'm talking like May to now, we still have not seen the fear and greed index get into extreme greed, not one time. So there is still very much the possibility that we eventually, have a bit more of a frothy market. Of course, we have seen some really strong gains. We never really saw things get too over leveraged. We never saw things get too frothy. None of that really happening. So I do still think that there's a lot of time. And in my opinion, this, like what we just saw over the past couple months, actually strengthened my conviction that we would see an alt season, because it shows that it's still there, right? The dry powder is still there. The interest is still there. The retail, the sentiment, all of this is still there. We just don't necessarily have the right macro conditions ready yet. And so that's the really, really important piece here that I wanted to kind of hyper focus in on, is that actually what we saw, in my opinion, proved that alt season is on the way. And this is just kind of maybe the last kind of little boring season, or sideways action, anything like that, until we start to see that. Now, if you are interested in trading Bitcoin, maybe you want to trade the sideways action, maybe you want to look at waiting for a dip to get in and start to open up another long position if you've been taking some profits on the way up. All of this is possible if you do want to use the links in the description below. I have one for BloFin as well as BTCC. BTCC offers really great sign-up bonuses like 10% on first-time deposits and up to $10,000 in deposit and trading bonuses. BloFin offers $5,000 or up to $5,000 to sign up as well if you are interested. I also do have that algorithmic bot that I have been using and I've put my own money into. It's been obviously drawing down a little bit because we have seen Bitcoin perform somewhat rough over the past little while. You can see the max drawdown now at about 12.7%. But overall, I mean, this bot has performed quite well. I've been quite pleased with it. And I think what we're seeing so far is very much kind of on the margins of what we would expect. So not really too concerned, not too worried about anything that we've seen so far. But if you are looking to kind of have something trade for you in your sleep and just kind of trade all the time, you can go unplug, you can go touch grass, you can do all that type of good stuff. This will always be there trading for you. So if that is something you are interested in, I do also have the link in the description below for that as well. So you do have to sign up with my link if you do want to get into it though. So again, you can feel free. It's all fairly simple there if you are looking to get into this. But moving on, I want to take a quick look at Bitcoin dominance, because that's the last thing that I think we really need to take a look at here to show kind of where we're at with many of these altcoins. In my opinion, what actually happens to KAS day to day doesn't matter. What actually happens to ICP day to day doesn't matter. What happens to ZBAC, Onyx coin, whatever, doesn't matter, because we need to essentially watch out for what the 800-pound gorilla in the room is doing, which is Bitcoin. And hopefully over the course of this video, you can kind of see my claims of why I think that's the case. But what we can see here on Bitcoin dominance is we had this pretty sharp sell-off, and now we are kind of grinding up a little bit again, not actually breaking above what appears to be this kind of key level of resistance at about the 62% range. So this next couple of days is going to be very interesting to see what happens. Do we get a rejection? Do we continue to consolidate in this range? Or do we kind of move back up? Because remember, when we saw this similar type of thing happen in like the November-December timeframe, we actually were set on kind of an elevated slope to get us back up above this kind of macro trend line that we have been seeing. So there is the possibility, that we could kind of see something like that, maybe like this, to kind of get us on and back above this macro trend line. Again, this would not be a positive thing at all for altcoins, at least in the short term. Maybe if we had an alt season, maybe we get it all back, and that would be something that could be kind of good for us in the long term. But at least in kind of the short to mid term, if we saw something like this continue to happen, would be a really rough time to be holding altcoins. So we definitely need to be very careful, and we need to be watching very closely to see what happens here, because this is going to make a huge difference one way or the other. So I personally am going to be looking for some consolidation in this range. That to me would be actually ideal, because it would prove that this kind of like uptrend is probably broken. Again, you never know for sure, but it would prove that the uptrend is probably broken, and hopefully it would give us some kind of it would keep some strength, and it would keep some momentum with the altcoins for a potential later altcoin run later on in the year. If we could see that, I think that would be kind of the ideal scenario. But again, overall, we don't know for sure yet. We'll have to kind of wait and see with time. But overall, hopefully you can kind of understand why I'm saying that Bitcoin is moving the markets right now, and what altcoins do day to day maybe necessarily doesn't make as big of a difference anymore, because again, all eyes are shifting back to Bitcoin and what Bitcoin is doing, and of course the macro market from there. But hopefully you found the information in the video useful. If you did, of course a like and a subscribe does help. And if you have any comments, questions, thoughts, feelings, whatever, just drop those in the comment section below, because I do try to read and respond to all of them. So anyway, thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next one.